revolution and civil war, our democracy has survived. Through depression and world war, it has prevailed. Through periods of great social and economic unrest, from civil rights to women's rights, it has allowed us slowly, sometimes painfully, to move towards a more perfect union. So now, class of 2010, the question for your generation is this: how will you keep our democracy going? At a moment when our challenges seem so big and our politics seem so small, how will you keep our democracy alive? How will you keep it well in this century? Now, I'm not here to offer some grand theory or detailed policy prescription. But let me offer a few brief reflections based on my own experiences, the experiences of our country over the last 2 centuries. First of all, American democracy has thrived because we have recognized the need for a government that, while limited, can still help us adapt to a changing world. On the fourth panel of the Jefferson Memorial is a quote I remember reading to my daughters during our first visit. It says, "I am not an advocate for frequent changes in laws and constitutions, but with the change of circumstances, institutions must advance also to keep pace with the times." The democracy designed by Jefferson and the other founders was never intended to solve every problem with a new law or a new program. Having thrown off the tyranny of the British Empire, the first Americans were understandably skeptical of government. Ever since, we've held fast to the belief that government doesn't have all the answers. We have cherished and fiercely defended our individual freedom. That's a strand of our nation's DNA. But the other strand is the belief that there are some things we can only do together as one nation, that our government must keep pace with the times. When America expanded from a few colonies to an entire continent and we needed a way to reach the Pacific, our government helped build the railroads. When we transitioned from an economy based on farms to one based on factories, and workers needed new skills and training, our nation set up a system of public high schools. When the markets crashed during the Depression, people lost their life savings. Our government put in place a set of rules and safeguards to make sure that such a crisis never happened again, and then put a safety net in place to make sure that our elders would never be impoverished the way they had been. Because our markets and financial systems have evolved since then, we're now putting in place new rules and safeguards to protect the American people. Now, this notion class hasn't always been partisan. It was the first Republican president, Abraham Lincoln, who said the role of government is to do for the people what they cannot do better for themselves. He'd go on to begin that first intercontinental railroad, set up the first land grant colonies. There was another Republican, Teddy Roosevelt, who said the object of government is the welfare of the people. He's remembered for using the power of government to break up monopolies and establish our national park system. Democrat Lyndon Johnson announced the Great Society during Commencement here at Michigan, but it was the Republican president before him, Dwight Eisenhower, who launched the massive capital undertaking known as the interstate highway system. Of course, there have always been those who oppose such efforts. They argue government intervention is usually inefficient. It restricts individual freedom and dampens individual initiative. And in certain instances, that's been true. For many years, we had a welfare system that too often discouraged people from taking responsibility for their own upward mobility. At times, we've neglected the role of parents rather than government in cultivating a child's education. Sometimes regulations fail. Sometimes their benefits don't justify their costs. What troubles me is when I hear people say times during the healthcare debate where somebody said, keep your government hands out of my Medicare. Which is essentially saying, keep government out of my government-run healthcare plan. And when our government is spoken of as some menacing, threatening, foreign entity, it ignores the fact that in our democracy, government is us. We, the people, hold our... We, the people, hold in our hands the power to choose our leaders and change our laws and shape our own destiny. Government's the police officers who are protecting our communities, the servicemen and women who are defending us abroad. Government is the roads you drove in on and the speed limits that kept you safe. Government is what ensures that mines adhere to safety standards and that oil spills are cleaned up by the companies that caused them. Government is this extraordinary public university, a place that's doing life-saving research, catalyzing economic growth, The truth is, the debate we've had for decades now, between more government and less government, it doesn't really fit the times in which we live. We know that too much government can stifle competition, deprive us of choice, and burden us with debt. But we've also clearly seen the dangers of too little government, like when a lack of accountability on Wall Street nearly leads to the collapse of our entire economy. What we should be asking is not whether we need big government or a small government, but how we can create a smarter and better government. Because in an era of iPods and TiVo, where we have more choices than ever before, even though I can't really work a lot of these things, but I have 23-year-olds who do it for me. Government shouldn't try to dictate your lives, but it should give you the tools you need to succeed. Government shouldn't try to guarantee results, but it should guarantee a shot, an opportunity for every American who's willing to work hard. So yes, we can and should debate the role of government in our lives. But remember, as you are asked to meet the challenges of our time, remember that the ability for us to adapt our government to the needs of the age has helped make our democracy work since its inception. Now, the second way to keep our democracy healthy is to maintain a basic level of civility in our public debate. These arguments we're having over government, healthcare, and war and taxes, these are serious arguments. They should arouse people's passions. It's important for everybody to join in the debate with all the vigor that maintenance of free people requires. But we can't expect to solve our problems if all we do is tear each other down. You can disagree with a certain policy without demonizing the person who espouses it. You can question somebody's views and their judgment without questioning their motives or their patriotism. Throwing around phrases like socialist, Soviet-style takeover, fascist, right-wing nut, that may grab headlines, but it also has the effect of comparing our government, our political opponents, to authoritarian and murderous regimes.